Doctors of Reddit, what's it like when you go in for a doctor's appointment? Do you and your doctor discuss what's wrong with you like it's a group project? Do you not go at all because you're your own doctor? It depends on what I'm going in for. As a background, I'm an oncologist, so I've trained in internal medicine before. For most internal medicine type stuff, I don't bother going in unless I need something that I can't easily get for myself, for example labs or images. For specialty stuff I wasn't trained in, I go in and try to give them the best history I can, but let them do their own thing. Internet high five from an oncology patient, thanks for doing what you do. Chiming in to agree with the other poster. My son had cancer and his doctors were amazing and kind. You really look to your oncologist for answers, and sometimes, hope. So, thank you for what you do. Part of why I, and many others, went into the field was for the especially close relationships we can forge with our patients, and what we can do for them during an incomparably tough time in their lives. So, it's our pleasure. My mom's a general practitioner and she usually just self-diagnoses most of the time but will sometimes get a second opinion. She doesn't really go to another doctor, just calls them to ask about stuff. Her contacts are filled with all kinds of doctors. It's like a secret underground community. For stuff like getting ultrasounds etc., then yes, they do discuss stuff like it's a group project. How was it growing up for you? Did she get over every little ache and pain, or were you just told to walk it off because she's seen so much worse? Asking because I know experiences from both sides. My grandparents were both physicians and lived with us while I was growing up. Grandma was a pediatrician and Grandpa was a surgeon. Anytime I had an ache or felt sick, she would examine me, then go to her bathroom medicine tablet and bring back medicine in a little paper cup. It always made me feel better. I later found out it was always a children's Tylenol. She was faking me out with the placebo effect. If I was actually sick, my grandma would have my mom take me to another doctor, as she was no longer practicing and couldn't order tests or prescribe medication. That's actually super sweet and adorable. Yes, so wholesome. Placebos are wild. Even when you know it's a placebo. What researchers found would surprise many, including Romanoff herself. The study, published recently in Nature Scientific Reports, showed people on placebos experienced significant improvements compared to those who didn't get the pills, a 29% improvement in fatigue severity and a 39% improvement in the extent to which fatigue disrupted quality of life. Web link. Fun fact. Naloxone can reverse an opioid overdose by blocking the opioid receptors in your brain. The placebo effect also operates using opioid receptors, so if someone has been given a shot of naloxone they will be immune to the placebo effect. What? I had no idea. Do you have a link where I can read more? Also now there's a picture in my head of heroin addicts trying to get a fix by signing up for clinical trials and hoping they're in the placebo group. Lol, that's funny, but naloxone definitely does not give you a fix. It actually does the opposite. It will pull someone out of an overdose, and immediately into a withdrawal. In fact, if you're ever in a situation where you have to administer naloxone, expect that the person you're giving it to will at best come to feeling like absolute horse crap, and at worst will be extremely combative. Always leaning to extremely combative. Always. I always tense up after spraying naloxone because I'm pretty sure the patient is going to want to throw hands, and it's my job as the basic to deal with that. Well, as someone who knows several junkies whose lives have been saved at the hands of someone like you, thanks for what you do. I did it to a roommate. It was not good. He almost instantly looked like absolute crap after being on cloud 9 before that, spent about 45 minutes vomiting and beelined for his bed where he spent the next 2 days. I felt bad, but he was going blue, so I did what I had to do. Edit. Thanks very much for the positive comments, they mean a lot. Nah, don't feel bad, man. You'd definitely feel a lot worse if he'd overdosed. You did the right thing. My dad is the head of my local emergency department. So I almost never went to the doctor other than to get shots or physicals for sports or for my health checkup before college, but the general rule of thumb for my household was if you're not actively dying, we aren't going to the doctor. He was just capable of doing most of it himself. One time I cut open my hand pretty deep when cooking and he sewed it up in the kitchen in like 5 minutes. Looking back on it, those days were pretty crazy, but the stories he brought back from the ER are much crazier. I once lodged a toothpick halfway into my foot. I limped to the bathroom where my mom, an RN, was taking a bath. She didn't even get out, just told me to bring her some hemostats. I sat on the toilet with my foot towards her and she clamped the toothpick and jerked it out, told me to wash it and put a band-aid on it and close the door on my way out. I think our mothers studied at the same nursing school. But it hurts. Yeah, well, maybe you should be more careful next time. Get me the Neosporin and be quiet. Make sure you close the door on your way out, Mom yelled. Not super related, but I used to see this guy when I was a teen whose parents are doctors. I remember him saying that if he was ever ill, his parents would essentially diagnose him and his sister and write a prescription, then just bring medicine back to them from work. Son, I can't go to school. I am sick, parent doctors, okay. Let's check you, son, F. Mom, order CAT scan, son. I just didn't want to take that test. I'm an ER doctor, and sometimes I have other doctors as patients. For the most part, they're pretty good patients because they can give a good description of their symptoms in a way that's useful to me. They usually ask good questions and are well equipped to have an informed discussion about their diagnosis and treatment. Sometimes it's hard for me to dial back my patient talk where I simplify medical terms for laypeople. Sometimes it's challenging if their area of expertise is totally unrelated to the issue at hand and they don't recognize their limited understanding. The worst patients are those who have just a little medical knowledge and think they know everything. Some version of, my aunt is a nurse, and she said I need a whole body MRI for this runny nose. As far as self-diagnosing, I usually deal with my own minor medical issues. If I notice signs of something more serious, I would go to someone else. As a veterinarian, many of my worst clients are nurses and doctors. Lots of questionable home diagnoses and treatments. Yeah, people and animals are pretty close, but we're not the same and medicines don't work 100% the same. I agree about having difficulty dialing back the patient talk though. These are folks that can understand medical terms, and I don't want to be demeaning, but I've got my dumbed down spiel about things and it just flows out. To be fair, I recognize that I'm probably annoying to my doctor too. Although when I went in for surgery last year I had a great time chatting with the anesthesia nurses about protocols until they drugged me. I'm also a vet, and I usually don't even tell my doctors what I do. I once let an endocrinologist go through a whole explanation of what hyperthyroidism is to me because I didn't want him to accidentally skip over something that's different between humans and cats. Turns out it's pretty much the same. And in the end I don't have it. That's a good point about them maybe skipping over something relevant. I never really considered that. Really? I usually let a new vet go on in patient talk for a couple minutes and eventually interject to let them know I'm a pathologist, and usually they relax into shop talk. My cat's new dermatologist even, in her words, nerded out and gave me a big lecture on the anatomy of the feline middle ear. She kind of lost me. It was over the phone, THX COVID, but was super interesting. That stuff is fun. I love getting to be a little nerdy with the medical folks. I just don't like the questionable home diagnoses and treatments. If you avoid those things, you're good in my book. I had a client dog eat a wild mushroom in his own garden. I was just dropping the dog off for the evening, owner's due back in 2 hours. I let the human doctor, client know, and she said to leave him and she was sure it would be fine, and cursed for getting to pull up those wild mushrooms. I took him to the vet anyway, kind of without her blessing since she said to leave him, but I knew she would be fine with it. They did the whole vomit injection thing, and she met me there to pay the bill and take him home. She thanked me profusely and told me how much she appreciated me making the call to take him in when I knew better, in spite of her suggestion not to. She also described something as a doggy cold, said the vet said that. I think she meant kennel cough? Last week. She's definitely one of those doctors who 100% realizes that she is a human doctor, not a veterinarian, and that she has huge gaps in her knowledge, and that's okay. Interesting you should say all of this. I was reflecting on my visit to the vet recently, and realized I was probably annoying to them. I'm a PA. So I plan on being more mindful going forward. And I've certainly had vets and dentists who were pains in the ass. I don't mind scientific questions and medical talk, that stuff is really fun. I mostly just mind when people self-diagnose and treat. Things like, "You're probably doing the right thing for if this was a human, but this is a cat. And for goodness sake, you're a physician, be a little compliant, please." Doctor here, family medicine. I self-diagnose most things, but for my 1-year-old daughter I decided a while ago that I don't want to do that for her. So her pediatrician doesn't know I'm a doctor, I never told her. I want her to treat me like any other parent, and explain everything to me like I'm 5 years old. I'm afraid of being too nonchalant with my daughter's health that I'll miss something, or the doctor assuming I know more than I really do. It's actually a strategy I've adopted since on myself. If I go to a doctor, say a gynecologist, for a routine checkup, I sometimes just don't say what I do so I can legitimately ask dumb questions about things that I should really know, or so that the other doctor won't leave out important info that they assume I know for fear of insulting me. On the other hand, my regular doctors do know, such as the gynecologist who saw me through my pregnancies, and that enables more complex and nuanced discussions about health decisions, as in debating questions and giving me options that he wouldn't necessarily do with IT patients, because he can be sure I understand the medical pros and cons well once I'm given a basic explanation. I wish I could do that with my kids. I am not a doctor at all, I am a sonographer and do ultrasounds. I work at the same hospital that my children's pediatricians group works. When my son was born in April, he ended up in the NICU. The fact that I knew everyone up there from scanning in the department was comforting. I know they are good people and practice well. At one point the NICU doctor said, "Well, you know how that is," and I had to tell her, "No, I have no clue how that is. I don't do diddly squat with lungs. I know the basic anatomy and that is it." Which is true, lungs have air, so ultrasound doesn't go anywhere near lungs. She told me I was going to get the normal script from then on out, so don't feel insulted if she told me things I already knew. Nope, explain it to me like it's my first day ever setting foot in a hospital. Please. That way no one assumes someone picked up what was left down. If anyone wanted to better understand what a high context and a low context culture is and how they impact communication, these are excellent examples. I feel like this comment relates a lot to my interpersonal communication skills as of late, and the interactions I've been having with the people around me. If I'm right, then you may have just given something a name that was previously too abstract and obtuse to really identify, but also something that has been having a big effect on my life for various reasons. Do you think you could expand a little bit on the topic? Or maybe give me a link to some relevant information, if it isn't too heady. I'm roughly average intelligence, not a doctor. Lol. Not a doctor either. The basic idea is that a high context culture works on the assumption that all parties involved are working with a similar base of knowledge, perspectives, life experiences, and just about everything else you can think of that makes up who they are. Because of that similarity, they don't feel the need to go into detail or address a topic directly. They can just reference it indirectly. For example, Japan is a very high context culture, and a common frustration I've noticed with people learning Japanese is that it's too indirect. Generally, any population that is homogeneous will have a higher context. A low context culture is the polar opposite. It works on the premise that people have different experiences and understandings. People in these cultures tend to explain things in more detail and be more direct. It is extremely common for heterogeneous populations to be low context. The US, for example, is a very low context culture. You can even see this in the way people write essays, which is quite interesting. I see a lot of papers by Vietnamese students learning English, and it sometimes breaks my brain. For an exaggerated example, I suggest watching Star Trek, The Next Generation episode Darmok, S5E2, which shows how understanding the words being said does not mean you understand what is being said. Honestly, the medical field in general is a great place to study cultural conflict, and I believe all professionals are required to take something about cultural awareness. Wow, I teach essay writing to Chinese students and have been so frustrated trying to get them to write/explain the intermediary steps in their logic. Do you have any advice or suggestions for things that have worked for you? I'm not the teacher myself, so I don't have any direct experience doing so. All I can suggest is breaking down academic writing in the US for them. Everyone knows the basics of writing an introduction, supporting paragraphs, and conclusion. This same tactic should be used for every paragraph. I should be able to look at the first and last sentence of every paragraph and get an idea of what it is about. All the sentences in the middle should support those statements. Beyond that, I don't know. I enjoy studying languages, but teaching them is not something I'm good at. Okay, you have just taught me something very important about myself, my preferred communication style, and how this impacts, both negatively and positively, on my work and home environments. I hate not knowing things or making assumptions, therefore my preference is to communicate in a low-context way. This impacts me at work because management tend to communicate in a high-context manner, or failed attempts at low context, and my train of thought is often at another station entirely. I can see now that it's then not appreciated being spoken to in a low-context manner in return. In my personal life, I waffle with my stories because I think all of the side details are important. This has resulted in being cut off mid-sentence or spoken over on many occasions. Damn. This was revealing. With regard to telling stories, work backward. Start by thinking about the punchline, or main thrust of the story. Don't say this part until the end. Now figure out which parts of the background are absolutely necessary to understanding the punchline. Make sure to include those bits, and perhaps a bit of color if it adds to the story. Do that, and be a good storyteller. Excellent Star Trek reference. You are awesome, and a great communicator. P.S. It seems that you've brought something brand new to a lot of people in this thread. We got some large-scale learning happening here. I was sat in a consultation between two doctors with one needing an ultrasound. They knew each other through work already, so it was very friendly and casual between the both of them. The patient doctor trying to figure out what was going on the ultrasound screen, and the doctor was teaching him the bits he didn't know. My dad's a doctor, and he said he'd stay up until 2 or 3 a.m. discussing medical school topics with his roommate, sort of for fun, and also for the obvious benefit. I can't even imagine the amount of nerd power being generated in that room. The one unmessed with my brain when I got to Dr. Edit, as other users have pointed out. The intro also features an in. So many double words it's cray. Doctor, gimme the news, I got a bad case of lovin' you. I'm sorry I read your chart wrong. It's actually a horrendous case of syphilis and not in fact lovin' you as initially expected. Again, my apologies. Please give this script to the pharmacy downstairs, and they will take care of you. Best of luck. Stay safe. Frowns at script. No pills going to cure my ill. This is one of my favorite Reddit comments ever. Let me introduce the group to Dr. Willard Bliss, the man who effed up saving President Garfield after he was shot. Edit, unprompted, but if anyone wants a good book on the assassination and Garfield's care over the months Garfield took to die, I'd highly recommend Candace Millard's Destiny of the Republic. Dr. features quite prominently. Web link. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.